Thank you for joining our lounge for part 2 of the sibling rivalry saga. Pissing contest, anyone? Sure does make a difference when you aren't even retaliating. Let's continue, shall we? Update. My brother decided to make his van into a truck. Asked for money again. I gave him pennies. Okay, part 2 of this mess. Is my brother really so obsessed with having a truck that he had to go and do this? Apparently, yes. I mean, on some level, I applaud his ingenuity when he made this thing. But he could have easily ruined his only method of transportation. Of course, it already looked like crap anyway. I didn't describe it in detail before, but the minivan that my brother's ex gifted him was pretty old and from the 1990s. The paint looked like crap, dents everywhere, the rear window was busted out and replaced with plastic. It has over 200,000 miles on it, and it wasn't worth much. A van like that with that age and high miles could develop a bad problem at any time. So the fact that my brother decided to put any money into the conversion, I find so weird. Though you may be asking where the entitled part is in all of this. Well, I'll tell you. My brother went asking our parents for money again, and had basically the same reaction when they refused him last time. He showed up giving them an apology for what happened last time he was there, then basically held his hand out asking for cash. They just told him to leave. And then they called me saying he came to them with the craziest idea of wanting to turn his minivan into a truck. They said they weren't lending him anything, and he literally told them that they just wanted him to suffer. Yeah. He was suffering so much to have a working vehicle that he had to hack it apart. My parents warned me to be on the lookout for my brother, so I waited by the window. He showed up nearly as fast as last time, parked right next to my Tundra, stared at it for a moment after getting out, and then shook his head. I think he was trying to convince himself that he doesn't like it anymore, even though he borderline pined over my truck when he wanted us to swap vehicles. I startled him pretty good when I opened the door before he even knocked. I asked if he was here to apologize after what happened last time. He acted like there was nothing for him to apologize for, until I pointed out exactly what from my previous post. He was basically like, "Oh yeah, that." The best I got was the most insincere, "Sorry about that," I ever heard. Then he went right into asking me for money. I asked him what happened to the money he got from selling the Ram, and he said he wasn't touching that money because it was the start of his savings for a replacement truck. But until then, he was hoping I'd lend him some money, even though he still owes me because he had a fantastic idea. He was going to hack off the back of his van and make a truck out of it. I said that was idiotic, but it was his van, so he could do whatever he wanted to it. Just leave my truck alone. He went pretty deadpan when I said that, but basically went back to saying he was just trying to make his van cool, and that he'd seen pictures online of what a conversion would look like. Then went out of his way to show me some Google pictures on his phone. I finally had enough and said that if he wanted money so bad, I'd give him some. He looked so happy, until I handed him a canning jar full of pennies and sarcastically said not to spend it all in one place. I'd been putting pennies into this jar little by little for 10 years. I like to keep the pennies separate from the quarters, nickels, and dimes. I imagine there was $30 in pennies in that jar at most. He gave me a very dirty look, but still took the pennies. I then told him not to bother with me for favors ever again until he was ready to own up to the crap he put me through and apologize for real. The next part of this comes from what mutual friends have told me, including the guy who owns the shop my brother worked on both the Ram and van in. My brother drove that van into his friend's shop and spent a week modifying it. He used an electric saw to hack the whole back end off of it, starting from behind the front seats. If this was some sort of throwaway fun vehicle, I'd get a kick out of it, but this is his primary vehicle. I don't think he can even legally drive his daughter in it anymore because it no longer has back seats. My brother also apparently wanted to cut the exhaust and straight pipe it into stacks too. But thankfully someone had the sense to tell him that wasn't legal and he'd get pulled over. But he pretty much spent a few days cutting and welding on this van, and honestly, I've seen worse. Though I can't fathom why he bothered to put any money into this thing. But he did. I think it's mostly junkyard parts, recycled wood and scrap metal, spray foam, and some spray paint and glue. He had to build a partial subframe behind the seats and weld the rear side doors shut to make it structurally sound. So he didn't completely half-butt it. He made a new backing behind the front seats out of recycled plywood, with a hole cut into it for a plexiglass window that was glued in. He rattle-canned the whole vehicle primer back with some red accents. The homemade truck bed he put in the van was also made out of recycled wood, and he built some sort of tailgate the same way, and also mounted the spare tire on the back of it. He also lifted the van a little using these twist stud things that you screw in between parts of the coil springs in the suspension, so they don't constrict as much from the weight of the vehicle and add height to it. I've seen it done before online, and I guess he did too and ordered some. He also managed to find some slightly better tires to put on it. He spray painted the old steel rims red, and the tires he had put on are beefier, but far from new. The previous tires were on their last legs anyway, though. He also added some tube frame right behind the cab with a couple of mismatched LED lights on it, and a tow hitch on the back. Oh, and he finished it up with another Zombie Patrol bumper sticker like he had on the Ram. He said the truck is powerful enough to tow his camper. Well, it's got a V6, so why not, I guess? The camper he owns and is currently living out of is only a little bigger than mine anyway, and mine's pretty small. My brother brought this creation to our parents' house, and we all saw it. He called us all a bunch of doubters, and then made a big show of gassing that crazy thing up and down the street. He kept yelling it ain't a chick car no more, like he was high on his own ego and adrenaline. Then he told us that he planned to lift it more with bigger springs and tires when he gets a chance, which our dad warned him would be very bad for it, as it's not really a truck, and he could break an axle, or something else doing that, and he was better off not modifying it any further. Of course, my brother acted like our dad didn't know what he was talking about. He was a tow truck driver for 30 plus years. He knows what he's talking about. They argued a little bit more, and my brother said the van truck was still just temporary anyway, until he got a man's truck again. Of course, the rest of us were basically just like, whatever floats your boat, man. Now go away. Well, no surprise my brother's ex refused to let him drive their daughter around in that homemade van truck because she deemed it not safe. The girl has to use a booster seat, and I think legally needs to ride in the back seat with it because of her age and size. Though if I'm wrong on that, feel free to correct me. I'm not going to tell you what state I'm in, and I know laws differ, but it's in the US. My brother's daughter also wasn't happy to see her mom's old van hacked up either, and said she didn't like it. And my brother apparently kept trying to convince her it was super cool. It's not. At least not for someone's primary vehicle. A fun vehicle for having a redneck good time, sure, but not a daily driver. He's driving this thing nearly every day to intentionally show it off, and he's extremely proud of it because I guess his friends seem to like it as well. Or at least that's what they tell him. No idea if they're just laughing behind his back or not. Someone suggested to me a while back to prank him by putting a funky bumper sticker on his van. Maybe I will. He's done it to me before. The last my brother and I spoke, he basically cornered me after work when I was getting a dinner at a Burger King and was talking like an elementary school kid at recess, saying my Tundra sucks because it's so boring, and his van truck was way cooler because it was something more original. Yeah, I really don't care, and told him as much. Then of all things, he actually wanted to drag race me again. Then got pissed when I told him no because, for one thing, he blew the head gasket on his Ram doing that before, and I really don't care to race him again because I'm not that stupid. And if he blows the head gasket or transmission on the high mileage van truck too, I'm not going to help him fix it. Well, he ended up rolling his eyes at me before leaving, and called me a douche yet again before driving off while playing the song Magic Carpet Ride on full volume. He really has it in his head that he's super macho, doesn't he? Edit. Yes, I understand many of you want to see pictures of this crazy vehicle my brother made, but I'm not going to post any because if my brother knew and saw this account, he'd threaten to sue me and say I'm defaming him. I know this because he threatened it before when I posted pics of him and his antics on social media. When I heard he actually went for a consultation with a lawyer, I deleted all those posts. So if you're going to say, pics or it didn't happen, I really don't care because I don't want to get sued. Knowing my brother, he might destroy that van truck thing within a year anyway. He likes to do stupid crap behind the wheel. My guess is he'll either blow the motor from being a lead foot or break the whole thing doing something you'd see on Dukes of Hazzard. The fact that he said your Tundra sucks because it's so boring just solidifies the fact that this is a pissing contest for him, even though he's the only one that has entered the contest. I don't understand this fascination and drive with trying to prove himself better than you. You're not even competing with him. He's just doing all this dumb crap and digging himself a deeper grave. Update. My brother just won't quit. I have more to tell now about how my August went. That crazy van truck thing my brother built was already bad looking enough as it was. But he's gone and made it even worse. He went out and got some junkyard truck mirrors. I'm talking the big old ones that are chrome steel and for big trucks off the 70s and 80s. And he put them on his van truck with self-tapping screws and hot glue. And of all things, he got a Dodge Ram emblem and glued it onto the grill. The van truck is a Ford for crying out loud. He also replaced the steering wheel with an aftermarket one I'm pretty sure was out of a junkyard vehicle because it was all scratched up. He also somehow found some bigger and beefier rear springs and installed them in the back, then removed the twist studs he already had in the front springs, so the vehicle has quite the angle of attack now, but not so much that I'd really call it lifted, more like mildly raised. Though it's better than how he had the suspension previously, and the extra bit of height in the back does help a bit when he's towing something. But the stupidest thing of all he did was got some neon orange truck nuts and hung them off the tow hitch. I was visiting my parents when my brother showed up in his abomination and went out of his way to show off what he'd done to it. He calls it the mini ram. Our parents openly said it was just plain stupid looking. I took one look at it and went out of my way to fall over laughing in the grass just because this was so insane. I don't know how he even insures this thing. He called me a jackass for laughing, and I just laughed some more. Our parents and even a neighbor joined in the laughing, and my brother just drove off without another word to any of us. I know I was pretty insensitive to laugh like that, but dang it was just too funny not to. My brother went back to sulking, and then went back to looking for odd jobs to make some extra cash. He borrowed Dad's old Harbor Freight utility trailer and started hauling garbage to the dump for people who can't or don't want to do it themselves as a side hustle. On this, I will compliment him because it's good honest work, and he's actually not overcharging anyone. But that's as far as my compliments go. I actually heard from a mutual friend that a couple of the people who hired my brother to haul their garbage only did so because they just loved to see him using that crazy mini ram he built. They get rid of their garbage and get a good laugh. Not sure if it's a win-win for my brother since they laughed at his expense. But he's making money, so I wouldn't care if I were him. He's potentially going to be driving that thing for a while till he can afford to replace it, so he's going to need to grow a thick skin when people laugh at him. He's not asked I or my parents for money again since the last time, and Mom and Dad thought it was hilarious when I told them I gave him a jar of pennies when he came begging a while back. But what he has been since then is insufferably irritating. It's gotten to the point I even suggested my brother get a mental evaluation. It started with me deciding to go camping for the weekend. After work on Friday, I hitched my camper up at my parents' house and drove to my usual place. It's by a river and basically a free area to camp in. I got lucky and there wasn't anyone else around, till I saw the mini ram making its way down the road with my brother's camper in tow and another car behind it. The first words out of my mouth were, "Give me an effing break." Of course it was my brother and a couple of his pothead friends. Just why, God? My brother parked in the same campsite as me, and I ended up laying some ground rules since they wanted to share the area. Rule 1, leave me the hell alone. Rule 2, leave me the hell alone. Rule 3, leave my stuff the hell alone. Rule 4, leave my food and beer the hell alone. No surprise, they broke all of those rules in just one night. I have a decent portable generator that I use to keep my camper powered and the fridge cold. I had a stock of cheap beer and plenty of hot dogs to cook on a mini charcoal barbecue. The first thing is that when I started my barbecue, I was just going to cook enough hot dogs for myself. But my brother and his friends begged me to let them cook theirs on my barbecue as well because mine was already lit. Fine, why not? Only they didn't bring many wieners, so they ended up begging for some of mine because they ran out so fast. They were smoking a lot of pot and had some serious cases of the munchies, so they went through all their food like they were in the middle of an eating contest. I told them tough luck, I only brought enough for myself, and they should have brought more. I got a pretty good one-finger salute from all three of them for that. They also were running out of beer on the first night, which I'm sure no one here is surprised to know, and I caught my brother trying to steal some out of my camper. He was drunk, but plenty lucid enough to know what he was doing. He just casually walked right in while I was listening to music on noise-canceling headphones and tried to walk out with a six-pack of talls. But I caught him and made him give the beer back. He did try the, "Oh, sorry, I was so drunk I went in the wrong camper" excuse, which I called BS on as he knew exactly what he was doing. He could still talk fine and wasn't looking like he was about to fall over like he usually does when he's wasted. He just said, "Fine," like a man-child, and set the beer down in my camper doorway, then intentionally farted in my direction as he walked off. And it was very nasty. Like, I'm surprised he didn't crap himself nasty. Glad he wasn't standing near a fire. My brother ended up running down the batteries on his camper playing loud music and hooked his power up to my generator without asking and unplugged my camper from it. He doesn't own a generator yet, so he just decided to hook up to mine and waste my gasoline. I didn't notice for a few hours, but when I did, I was pissed and ripped his cord off of my generator and yelled out his name. He just made some drunken excuses and then said I should be sharing anyway since we were camping together. I said we weren't camping together. I was happily camping alone and he was a leech who followed me. Then I got all my stuff together and locked myself in my camper for the night. I also locked my generator and gas cans in my truck's canopy so they couldn't get at them. They knocked on my camper door a few times, but I never answered. I had to pound some whiskey I brought in a flask to get some sleep because of all their noise. The next day, my brother and his two friends were butthurt because they ran out of beer, food, and power. But I didn't give two craps and refused to let them have anything of mine. What I brought was for me, and if they want more, they can drive the 15 miles to the nearest store in the morning and get some. Which they had to do with hangovers. I packed well. I had 2 big sandwiches from our local supermarket prepackaged and ready to eat. I had eggs, cheese, and bread to make myself breakfast with a propane hot plate. I cooked scrambled eggs with sliced hot dogs in them, and a grilled cheese sandwich to go with the eggs. And I had plenty of beer and soda remaining. Of course, my brother didn't have any of these things because he didn't come prepared. He just figured he could use my stuff since I was already there. I told him to leave me and my stuff alone, and next time, make sure he has enough supplies to at least last the weekend. My brother finally did get something smart, and moved his campsite further down the road from mine. We didn't talk for the rest of the time we were there. On Sunday morning, though, I was woken up to my brother and his friends shooting cans with a .22, and they kept that up till they ran out of ammo, which took forever because they were using a single-shot target rifle. My brother has had it for years. It was his first gun. He bought it for like $50 at a gun show more than 10 years ago. It's a super simple rifle and can only load 1 bullet at a time because it has no clip. So you have to shove the bullet into the barrel manually and set the bolt, meaning a box of 50 bullets goes a long way with this gun. I think they were intentionally shooting with it all morning to irritate me. Good thing I have those headphones. Then that evening when I was packing up to go home, so was my brother. It was like he went out of his way to leave just before me, so I'd have to convoy behind him the whole way home. Yes, you all know by now from my prior posts that he is that petty. But I didn't really care. We were driving to the same place, and he's not a slow driver anyway. I took a different road as soon as I could, though, dropped off my camper back at my parents' house, and went home. None of you will be surprised to know, though, that my brother the next day complained to our parents about what happened. I ended up giving my side of the story over the phone on speaker while he was still over there because they didn't really believe him. My brother had a total tantrum over that, and I said that maybe he needs to see a doctor or something because I think he's got some sort of mental problem. Our parents agreed with me that he had a screw loose, and my brother said we could all screw ourselves and left like a bratty teenager. What a douche. It sounds like you definitely have way more of your crap together than your brother. It's like he's never had to fend for himself or think for himself before. Was he just handed things as a child? Where does this come from if you're not like this? I feel like he was definitely babied. The entitlement has to come from somewhere. Update. My entitled brother likes to steal my beer, so I bought the worst tasting beer I could find and left it out for him to take. I originally tried to post this in r/petty revenge, but the mods strung me along for over a week on maybe and then denied the post. So I'm posting it here. Not long ago, I posted about how my brother went out of his way to follow me when I tried to go camping alone. Him and that crazy vehicle he calls the mini ram that he made by cutting up a minivan and adding all sorts of other mods. My brother has stolen beer from me before on previous camping trips because he and his friends always drink too much and never buy enough. And when he followed me to my camping spot with his own camper a couple weeks prior, he tried to steal a 6-pack from my fridge and acted like a big baby when I made him give it back. So I thought up this little gem of an idea, but it was no easy feat as my brother will drink just about any beer, so long as it gets him drunk. To try and find a beer that was truly nasty, I started asking around and buying different brands. After a couple weeks, I hit pay dirt. I won't say the brand name of beer, but it was bad. There was so much hop to the flavor that it made me shudder every time I took a swig. I could barely finish one bottle without puking because it made me gag so much. So this stuff was perfect. Also, I know some people really like that kind of overly hoppy beer. I'm not trying to offend, but to me, it was just horrid. I started openly talking about going camping again in my favorite area and getting my friends to join in. My brother easily got wind of this and decided he wanted to go camping too. He showed up with his mini ram and camper about 2 hours after I'd gotten to the campsite. Only this time, he didn't try to park next to me and instead went to the next spot about 100 yards further down the road. My friends and I partied it up on our own way, played music, danced like idiots around a fire, played stupid games. All the usual. And knowing my brother, he and his friends would run out of beer at some point and try to mooch off of us because they had no concept of drinking in moderation. They didn't bother us on the Friday night, but on Saturday night around 1 or 2 a.m., my brother hobbled over asking for beer. We all just ignored him like he wasn't there, which made him get an attitude. One of my friends brought his big cooler and was keeping all our good beer and food in it, and we kept the cooler near us or locked in my truck at all times. Inside my camper, I left 2 full 6-packs of that horrid beer in the mini fridge. My brother just grabbed them and walked away. He acted like he was being sneaky, but seeing a drunk man act like he was invisible was just hilarious. About a half hour later, my brother came hobbling back and looking sick. He started demanding to know what was in the beer I bought. I started asking him what he meant, because I didn't give him any of my beer. He looked flustered for a moment, and then finally just said he took some beer from my camper. I asked if it was the special named brew, and he said yes. I laughed and said that stuff was crap, and he could have it. I even pulled out another 6-pack that was minus the one I drank when I tested the beer and tried to hand it to him. He looked like he wanted to throw up at the sight of it and left. Then, just to be extra petty, my friends and I snuck over to his campsite after a little while and left the remaining six-pack on top of his cooler. He and his friends were all wasted and actually still drinking the nasty beers I tricked them into stealing. And their faces all showed how bad it was. Every time one of them took a swig, it was followed by RBF. But they were so drunk that they probably wouldn't even notice there was more of that same beer. My friends and I watched from nearby as they kept drinking and making sour faces. My brother eventually puked on himself and then ran into the river to get the vomit off himself. He threw up some more in the water. It wasn't a pretty sight. Even though we could barely see him in the dark, we could still hear him. He repeatedly threw up with his face in the water and made loud gurgling noises, then cursed my name over and over again. That's when we finally had enough of watching them. I didn't see my brother or his two friends again until well into the afternoon. They were all badly hungover, and despite how much they drank, they couldn't forget the nasty beer they had the night before, especially since the bottles were littered all over the ground. My brother actually demanded I apologize, and I just laughed and said, "You actually want me to apologize to you for stealing beer from me?" And then we all started laughing at him. I think next time I'll get some beer spiked with laxative to leave for him. That might be funny. Honestly, the best way to catch someone trying to pull a fast one on you. And the best part is that he puked on himself. Update. The growler runs. Well, I actually managed to pull it off. I wanted to go camping again while it was still good enough weather a few weeks ago, and tricked my brother into following me once again. For some reason, he keeps following me every time I went camping up until this point. To the same dang place, no less. Both of the same friends who went with me last time also tagged along for this because they didn't want to miss it. After planning the trip, I made sure my brother knew about it by going out and buying a used portable DVD player off Marketplace. Yet another thing that can be considered a luxury while camping. Yes, I know they're outdated, but I like DVDs. And most laptops don't come with a disc player it drives anymore, and you have to connect one. So a portable DVD player you can watch a movie on your own with is nice. But I know my brother. If I have something he doesn't, he has to find a way to either get a similar thing or get something better to compete with me. If he can, that is. Sometimes he tries and gives up. I mean, the portable DVD player I got only has a 9-inch display, but it functions like new, and I got it for only $20. I got it still in the original box by the previous owner, who bought it for his kids and they barely used it. I know my brother is trying to save money right now to buy a replacement truck after he had to sell what was left of his Dodge. So he gave me quite a passive-aggressive, "must be nice" type comment when I posted a pic of the DVD player on social media and pointing out that now I can enjoy movies in comfort when camping. But the post also mentioned the next time I was going camping with friends. So getting the DVD player seemed like a nice innocent excuse to talk about it. With my brother now baited, I went to a local place that fills growlers specifically and had them fill several growlers belonging to my friends and myself. I brought an extra growler bottle that was different looking from the rest, so I'd know which was which. The clerk had no idea I put the laxatives into the bottle just before it was filled. He didn't even bother to look if it was clean. I just told him all the growlers were recently washed, and he filled them without question. That growler only fit in my camper's small fridge after I took out all the shelving, but I got it in there. The rest of the beer we kept in a couple of coolers to be kept away from my brother. I still can't believe he fell for this after what happened the last 2 times, but he really was a creature of habit. He and his friends get super dumb when they drink and smoke weed at the same time, and they'll act like they're in a college frat and do the very stupid crap. Just like I expected, my brother showed up and parked his camper at the same campsite as last time, just down the road. The first day, he didn't bother us until evening. He and his buddies came over pissed drunk and wanting to screw around. They saw that we were drinking beer from growlers this time and asked which beer we'd gotten, which was a nice honey beer. No, I will not say which one because it's a local brew that would clue people in on where I live. I could see them all look upset because undoubtedly they'd only brought a few 18-packs of the cheapest beer they could find, which I later confirmed to be true when I saw they had a mix of Pabst and Rolling Rock. My brother asked if he could have one of the growlers, and one of my friends told him to F off and that they were ours. We did split the cost of filling them 3 ways. My brother looked really angry, especially since I took that moment to break out the portable DVD player and started playing the movie Buckaroo Banzai, a classic I've always loved. Sure, it wasn't much for 3 guys sitting in lawn chairs to be watching an 80s movie on a 9-inch screen, but it was enough to make my brother fume, especially since he likes that movie too. Over at his campsite, they don't have a generator and have to run everything on battery. My brother has a boombox that uses D batteries, and I imagine they needed a good few of them to make the music last 3 days. But other than that, they just had their phones and some portable solar recharge stations for them. They do have my brother's laptop, but he can't play DVDs. So my brother basically gave us an F this and trudged back to his camper. We started to think the prank would be a bust because my brother didn't make any moves on the growlers that night, and nearly all of Saturday. He and his friends didn't even interact with us. We figured maybe they had enough cheap beer to stay sated this time and didn't want any more trouble. But stupid is as stupid does. And on the Saturday evening right at dusk, my brother snuck over and raided my fridge while we were out for an evening swim in the river before losing the light. Truth is, we only did that to see if he'd come running in to steal the growler while we were all away while it was getting dark. And that's exactly what he did. We saw him make off with the growler from my fridge with a crap-eating grin and giving us the finger as he ran away with it. We had the coolers locked in my truck, so the fridge was the only place for him to look. He and his friends made a big show of drinking the honey beer out of disposable cups right in front of us and laughing. We pretended to be mad and said we'd get them back for that while shaking our fists. Well, the prank was already underway. The laxative was supposed to be a tasteless liquid that mixes with anything. I figured I could use the whole bottle and it just watered down with a gallon of beer. I figured it was just enough laxative to ruin someone's day, though looking back, I definitely shouldn't have used it all. To give a visualization of the results, imagine that bathroom scene from Dumb and Dumber times 3, and no bathroom. One of them nearly crapped his pants when it first hit. They were squatting behind bushes in the dark. We could hear it all. They were moaning and groaning with all the nasty, wet fart noises to go with. I think they were all squirting out there for hours. The smell was horrid too. I haven't smelled anything that bad in ages. And I guess they didn't either, because their own smell was making them puke too. Puking and crapping at the same time. Oh, poor Kenny's dad. That's an old inside joke we sometimes use because of a South Park episode. But yeah, I took this prank too far. But it was too late to do anything but let it play out by then. I went over and took back the growler and washed it out in the river. Some people warned me before that my brother might try to sue me for the prank. But he can't sue if there's no evidence and everybody denies it ever happened. To make matters worse for my brother and his friends, a couple of guys from a family that was camping further down the river heard and smelled them and walked in with a couple of bright flashlights to ask if they were okay. My brother had to awkwardly explain that they just had some bad beer and politely asked them to go away and not worry about him. My brother and his friends spent some time cursing my name and having awkward conversation with each other since they couldn't do much of anything else while their bowels and gag reflexes were out of control. At one point, I think I heard my brother say, "Oh God, it's all over my shoes." And when they finally were able to stop, they had to go cool their butts in the cold river. The water was okay during the day, but pretty chilly at night. My friends and I all stopped drinking as soon as my brother stole the growler, so we could sober up and drive home in the middle of the night before my brother could retaliate against us. And he would have definitely retaliated if we were still there by morning. I didn't want to risk him breaking something expensive in a mantrum, so we were out of there. My brother did call me angry the next day's evening. The laxative plagued him and his friends all night and day, and they had to make 3 pit stops on the way home. I just laughed and told him that this is what he gets for being a thief, and to never steal beer from me again. Besides, I don't think he and his friends would want anyone to know about what happened either. And my friends and I won't say anything if he and his friends don't. My brother begrudgingly agreed to that. I also wanted him to stop following me every time I go camping. If he wants to go camping, do it some place or time I'm not, because I'm sick of him following me just because he wants to screw with me. He agreed to that as well, and no one has spoken a word to anyone about what happened, except me posting here, that is. He has to learn somehow. How does this guy not learn? This is honestly baffling me. And why the pissing contest? It's not like you're bragging about it or waving it in his face. Update. I went camping without my brother, and he went camping without me. He hated it. I guess my brother only liked camping if it meant screwing with me in some way. 2 weeks after I pranked my brother with laxative-spiked beer and a growler, I went camping again. This time in a completely different place deeper in the hills and forest. I went alone this time too. I know a lot of y'all are probably thinking, yes, it seems like I go camping too much. Well, that's because my brother ruined several trips till I got back at him, and I wanted one final trip to make up for it this year. And admittedly, having a camper trailer makes a nice home away from home. I don't know if you've ever had such a pleasant morning where you wake up to just the nicest fresh air and feeling good and rested for a change. But that's how it was for me on this trip. I was worried that my brother might try to follow me again, but he didn't. He didn't even try to go camping at all while I was out there. And he knew in advance where I was going too, as we've both been there before. I went up to a reserved camping area that had a lot of open spots because since summer ended, people aren't camping as much. I parked my trailer in a good spot, met a few nice people, and had some beers while sitting outside and watching movies on the portable DVD player. Caught up on some light reading, enjoyed roasting marshmallows with some other people and making s'mores. It was a really simple and enjoyable time. I actually attracted some attention with the portable DVD player because no one there had seen someone use one in a while. I mean, they're so handy. Why are people still not using them? You should be able to go to the electronics store right now and get ones that can play Blu-rays. But I ended up drawing in a young married couple who were camping next to me by watching a DVD of Ford vs. Ferrari. Such a good movie. and it opened the door for me to hang out with a few other people there. A lot of us gathered around a fire pit. I had stuff for s'mores, and so did they. So it was just a grand old time of a s'more party, though we did comedically bicker a bit over which chocolate is best for s'mores. Hershey's all the way. It all went just how I like camping to be. No one to wake me up by knocking on my door. No one asking for beer handouts. No one trying to screw with me. Friendly neighbors who don't make a ton of noise. Making new friends, etc. I haven't had that good of a camping experience since before COVID. And back then I didn't have my camper either. So this experience was extra good for me. I ended up singing the praises of how good the camping trip was online after I got home, and my brother seemed rather perturbed by it because he had another passive-aggressive comment, which he later removed because our parents saw it too and harped on him for trying to gaslight me again. If I recall, the comment was something like, "Must be nice to enjoy camping alone and having everything you want." It was pretty obvious he was trying to bait me, but it didn't work well. So what does my brother do? He decides he's going to do camping the same way I did, in the exact same place too, and on the following weekend. Suffice to say, it did not go well for him. Firstly, he went online and found a used portable DVD player like I did for cheap, but he whined that he paid more for it than I did mine, and I don't think he was a fan of the screen size, but it was all he could find on short notice. Then, while camping, he complained online about the people that are not being so friendly to him. Ergo, he possibly annoyed them until they told him to go away. If you're meeting my brother for the first time in such a place, he can come off as either a whiny a-hole or mooching hothead, or a general douche. And he talks people's ears off about things he makes up and exaggerates. If you try to walk away, he'll follow you. He complained they laughed at his mini RAM, and he also said he felt like he was being judged by them for having cheap beer. That kind of sounds like paranoia to me. He also complained that it wasn't very fun to watch DVDs on a player that only had a 9-inch screen. Even though he has a TV and gaming setup in his camper since he lives in it now, he didn't have a way to power it up without a generator or power outlet. Anyway, if all that wasn't bad enough, he complained of just being very bored in general. There was no one there he could get away with pestering, and I doubt anyone enjoyed his bragging about the mini-RAM, and he probably had little else to do other than sitting around on his phone. He live-streamed a video of himself going hiking, and shortly after the video started recording, he tripped over a stick because he was paying too much attention to his phone and landed on his face. He was trying to show off and act like he was some sort of professional while doing a fake British accent. The fall gave him a black eye and a swollen left side on his face. He deleted the video off his social media before most people saw it, but some, including myself, still caught it. Then his last day was spent mostly indoors of his camper because it was raining heavily. That's why I wanted to get my camping urges over and done with before the fall rains really kicked off. Fall and winter is mostly just swampy rain here, and we get a lot of it. So flooding in some areas happens a lot. Pennywise would drown. My brother basically spent that last day watching DVDs on his portable DVD player, playing on his phone and laptop, and not doing much else. He pretty much posted online about every little thing he was doing because of how bored he was. Then, he said he was just going to go home and play video games. But when he tried to leave, the mini-RAM wouldn't move. It started, but wouldn't shift into drive. He panicked and called me. Over the phone, we talked and came to the conclusion that most of the fluid had leaked out of his transmission after I had him check it. So I drove down in heavy rain to meet him over there at dusk with some new fluid and a bottle of Lucas transmission fix to help the seals and the shifting. That got the mini-RAM going again, and my brother begrudgingly reimbursed me for the gas I used to get there and for the fluids. He also later admitted the mini-RAM is shifting better. He somehow went this whole time without bothering to check the transmission fluid. I'd like to say the look of defeat he had was priceless. But this time I couldn't even laugh at his misery. His ego already took a bad enough hit that he had to call me for help. I reminded him that his mini-RAM was a vehicle on borrowed time, and it likely wasn't helping the transmission with all the extra weight he was towing around with his camper. For once, he didn't disagree with me. Normally, he's pretty jerkish around me in general, but on this day we didn't fight or even disagree or anything. He's already invested enough in the stupid red deck mods on that van or truck without much return other than feeding his own ego. My brother's ex-girlfriend told me she pissed away enough money on that van long before she gave it to him, and he cut it up into the mini-RAM. Once the engine or transmission goes, maybe someone else would be interested in buying what's left of it. I ended up towing his camper home for him so he could go easy on the mini-RAM's transmission, and just to make him feel better, I brought along my old set of walkie-talkies, and we had some fun talking back and forth with them. We both took a crack at trying to speak trucker, but admittedly we're both terrible at it, which is ironic because both of our parents know CB lingo inside and out from the 70s and 80s. I got my brother's camper back to his home, and we were having an awkward goodbye when his douchey housemates started making stupid jokes at us. And of course, my brother had to be himself and join in on it with them. Tilla whispered about how they might want to know how he fell on his face, and then he told them to shut up. That was pretty much the end of that. must be nice to enjoy camping alone and having everything you want. This guy hasn't even tried to work nearly as hard as you to actually earn things that he has. Maybe if he did, he'd actually learn to appreciate what's around him and practice gratitude. Seems like he's never really had to work too much for anything in his life. He's just lazy. Likes things handed to him. He's not going to get too far doing that. How can he be jealous and compare himself to someone like you who he doesn't even add up to? Maybe if he worked just as hard, then this whole contest fiasco might make some sense. But it doesn't. You're a good brother. You went and helped him when he really needed it. He should appreciate what you do for him and not just take it for granted. That should motivate him to be a better person. Do you have a sibling like this? Let us know your stories in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on Our Lounge for Part 2. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you have something you want to say regarding today's content, share that with us in the comments below.